What if you turned a corner and saw yourself? Not a twin, not a clone, you. The same face, the same voice, the same everything, standing there, staring back at you. Would you say hi? Would you run? Or would the universe fall apart? Think about it. Every memory you have, every choice you made, led you right here. But what if you could interrupt that? What if you could go back and shake hands with the you who hasn't made those choices yet? Imagine that moment, the awkward silence, the uncomfortable staring, the strange feeling that you're looking into a mirror, but the reflection has a mind of its own. But maybe meeting yourself isn't just awkward. Maybe it's dangerous. Today, we're ripping open that question. We're diving headfirst into paradoxes, timelines, and the weirdest, wildest what if of all time. What happens if you go back in time and meet yourself? Let's imagine it. You step into a time machine, or maybe it's an accident, a glitch in reality, a wormhole that opens where you least expect it. Suddenly, you're not in today anymore. You're 10 years in the past. The streets look familiar, but not quite right. Your phone doesn't even exist yet. The songs on the radio feel like time capsules. And then, in the distance, you see them. You, a younger you, maybe still figuring life out. Or maybe it's an older you, wiser, or worse, broken in ways you haven't even lived through yet. And here's where things get tricky. The second you show up, 1,000 questions hit your brain like a freight train. Will they remember this moment years later? And if they do, doesn't that mean you always came back? If you warn them about a mistake, will they change their path and erase the very version of you who just traveled back? And the biggest one of all, what if this meeting, this single conversation, isn't just changing your life, but the entire timeline itself? Because in stories, time travel always seems fun, even harmless. But in reality, one word to the wrong version of yourself could rewrite everything. Every choice you've ever made, every person you've ever met, every moment you thought was unshakable, gone, or worse, replaced. So before you even open your mouth, you have to wonder, is meeting yourself the greatest discovery of all time? Or the beginning of the biggest disaster the universe has ever seen? Okay, let's forget about paradoxes for a second. Let's just talk about how weird this would actually feel. You're standing there, face to face with yourself. At first, you might think it's like looking in a mirror, but it's not. Mirrors don't talk back. Mirrors don't frown when they see you. Mirrors don't cross their arms and say, "Wow, you're me?" And suddenly you realize something strange. You might not even like yourself. Sure, you tolerate yourself in the mirror every morning, but this is different. This version of you, younger, older, whatever, is a whole person. They have habits you forgot you had. Maybe their voice sounds higher, or they slouch in a way you worked hard to fix. Maybe they're a little cocky, or a little too shy, and you're thinking, oh no, was I really like that? Or, am I still like that? It gets worse. There's the awkward silence. You both stare, waiting for the other one to speak first. Do you shake hands, hug? Do you make a joke? Or do you accidentally insult yourself? What if your younger self looks at you and says, "That's it? That's who I become?" What if your older self sighs and mutters, "You have no idea what's coming"? Psychologists already know we're terrible at seeing ourselves the way others do. We cringe at our recorded voice. We hate old photos. Now imagine that times 1,000, because meeting yourself isn't just strange. It's like meeting a stranger who knows every single one of your secrets and is about to remind you of every single mistake. All right, awkwardness aside, let's get into the real question. What does time allow here? Because when it comes to time travel, there are a few competing theories, and each one says something completely different about what happens when you meet you. Theory 1, the fixed timeline. In this version of reality, time is like a movie that's already been filmed. Every scene is locked in. That means if you went back and met yourself, you always went back and met yourself. Your younger self already remembers the meeting because it already happened. There's no changing the past because you're already part of it, which is kind of comforting, right? no paradoxes, no broken universes. But it also means you can't fix anything, because everything you do back then is exactly what you already did. Theory 2, the dynamic timeline. This one's messier. Here, the past isn't set in stone, it's wet clay. And the second you poke it, you change everything. Tell your younger self to avoid that terrible relationship. Suddenly, your entire present starts shifting, like a photograph slowly fading. Best case, you improve your life. Worst case, you erase the version of yourself who even traveled back. And then there's theory 3, the multiverse. Here's where it gets truly wild. You didn't actually meet your younger self. You met the younger self of another universe, which means you can say whatever you want, do whatever you want, and your timeline is safe. But theirs, completely up for grabs, and now you're stuck wondering, did you just change their world forever? And if they ever invent time travel too, could they show up in your past? Different rules, different outcomes, and no one really knows which one we live in. But one thing is certain, each theory completely changes what meeting yourself would mean. Here's where things start to get really twisted. You've probably heard of the grandfather paradox, the classic time travel mindbender. It goes like this. If you went back in time and stopped your grandfather from meeting your grandmother, you'd never be born. But if you're never born, how could you go back in time in the first place? Boom. Instant logical meltdown. Now, meeting yourself adds a new flavor to that paradox. Call it the self-paradox. Think about it. If you go back and warn your younger self about a huge mistake, they avoid it. Great, right? Except that means you never suffered from that mistake. And if you never suffered from it, you'd have no reason to go back and warn yourself in the first place. So which version happens? The one where you warned them or the one where you didn't? Your very presence might loop reality into a knot. Some scientists, and a few sci-fi writers, suggest the universe would just fix itself. That's the Novikov self-consistency principle, the idea that no matter what you try, time finds a way to keep events consistent. Translation: if you went back to tell yourself something, maybe you only did it because your younger self already remembered you doing it. But that's where things get even creepier. Because if your younger self remembers you showing up, does that mean you never had a choice? Maybe the timeline isn't just unbreakable. Maybe it's already scripted. And the version of you standing there, face to face with yourself, might just be an actor saying lines you were always meant to say. So let's step out of the movies for a second and ask the big question. If you really met yourself, what would actually happen? Would the universe shatter in a flash of light? Would time freeze? Or would nothing dramatic happen at all? Physicists have toyed with this idea for decades, and a lot of them point to something called the Novikov self-consistency principle. It basically says, sure, you can time travel, but you can't create contradictions. Meaning, if you met your past self, it would only happen in a way that keeps the timeline intact. So maybe you'd go back in time to warn your younger self about failing that big test, and somehow they'd still fail it anyway. Or you'd try to hand them the winning lottery numbers, but they'd lose the ticket. The universe wouldn't let you break it. But then there's another possibility, one that's way less comforting. The psychological fallout. Meeting yourself might not tear space-time apart, but it could tear you apart. Think about it. We already struggle to accept how we've changed. Old photos make us cringe. Hearing our recorded voice makes us wince. Now multiply that discomfort by 1,000. Standing in front of yourself might feel like looking into the deepest, darkest corners of your own life. Every regret, every failure, every what if, staring right back at you. Would you be proud of who you became or horrified? And what about your other self? What if they hate what you turned into? What if they reject you? No paradox, no explosion, just something even scarier. The possibility that meeting yourself could leave you more broken than any time travel theory ever could. All right, enough of the dark, heavy stuff. Let's get wild for a minute. Because if you met yourself, yes, it could be awkward. Yes, it could be dangerous. But it could also be the coolest thing that's ever happened. Think about it. You'd have the ultimate partner in crime. Need to get twice as much done in half the time? Boom. Two of you. Need someone who understands you better than anyone else in the world? Boom. Huh. It's literally you. You could teach yourself new skills faster, help yourself make the right choices, maybe even pull off the impossible, like some time-traveling superhero tag team. But then things get even stranger. Imagine the feedback loops. You tell your younger self something, advice, a warning, a life hack, and they remember it, live by it, and then years later when they become the you who goes back in time, they tell their younger self the exact same thing, over and over, forever. No one even remembers who started it. What if that's where some of your gut instincts come from? What if some weird random habit you have, like always taking a certain route home or avoiding a certain food, isn't random at all? What if you told yourself to do it and just forgot that you were the one who planted the idea? And here's the really insane part. What if you didn't just meet one version of yourself, but all of them? Every age, every fork in the road, every version of you that could have been. Would you still feel like one person? Or would you realize you've been many people all along? Meeting yourself might not just change your past, it might change what you even think the word you means. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to subscribe. And if you want curious questions answered, have a look at some of our other videos.